It seems to me that isekai has been one of the genres that modern anime has been known or notorious for. There's a lot of them, and I mean a lot. Things seem to have reached a head back in the mid-2010s when there seemed to be half a dozen of them every anime season. Things have slowed down a little bit, but we can't deny the impact the genre's had in the past decade or so. But what are the best ones? The most influential ones? The most popular ones? Today's list aims to give my opinion on some of these titles from the genre that have had a lasting impact on the anime industry. How a realist hero rebuilt a kingdom is at number 30. Relatively niche, quite a show that went under the radar even when it was airing. This is, in my opinion, one of the landmark representatives of a subgenre that has shown some potential. Kingdom building typically eschews the usual superpowers and the fighting in favour of what it says on the tin. Kingdom building and putting the stakes in the more political, economical and the social side of things. That much can be seen in this show, which makes it a rather unique viewing for the usual anime fan who's accustomed to battle shonen or rom-coms. Realist hero isn't free from things like the harem tropes and the long-winded dialogues, mind you. Regardless, this could be a good introduction to the subgenre and a test of whether it's for you or not. Number 29 is Arifureta. And here's something a lot more popular. Arifureta has been one of the gateways to this certain brand of edgy, weak to overpowered isekais with a dash of revenge plot. It plays everything by the book, with the overpowered protagonist, the angsty plot, the harem, and of course, the fights that serve to showcase how awesome our characters are. In a lot of ways, it's popcorn entertainment, as I like to call it. But I'll give credit on how the world and its story does get a lot more engaging over time, expanding past the initial premise of a revenge plot and giving us an underdog story set in an interesting world. Season 1 has had laughably bad production, but as with the rest of the story, the second season improves on that by more than a mile. We've got more seasons coming our way, and that's expected for one of the more popular stories in the genre. So I'm a Spider, So What is at number 28. If what attracts you to Arifureta is not the edgy but the whole underdog tale of someone going from weak to strong, this spider isekai could be an alternative to consider. As a sarcastic bonus, it also suffers from the CG issues that have plagued Arifureta, although to a much lesser degree. All kidding aside though, So I'm a Spider does have its share of charms, mainly from the plucky main character who is a joy to watch. It also emphasises the RPG vibes, which has been a main selling point of the genre, it seems. I mean, it's not exactly a shining example of a top isekai, but if you want something to pass the time, this is certainly one of the better shows to do it on. It's a pretty fun casual watch at the end of the day. Problem Children Are Coming From Another World is at 27. Teen rebels get transported into a vibrant world where everything is decided by games. They get a lot of shine while being accompanied by a fan service bait girl who's had more than her share of klutziness. No, it's not the show you're likely thinking of for 27, but it may as well have been a prototype. Probably Children is an anime from 2013 that takes viewers into the colourful world of Little Garden. It's quite the underrated show for 2013 standards if you ask me actually. I also classify it as popcorn entertainment as well, but it does pull off its awesome moments really well, especially with a protagonist who has the power to nullify others' powers. The cool ways he gets used to the power is something to watch out for. Sadly, the series has the weird distinction of only having 10 episodes. It's a passable adaptation, but it's one of those titles that really makes me wish it got a sequel. 26th on the list is something that's pretty dear to my heart: Recreators. Being a person who's engaged in the creative side of things before, Recreators and its premise is one that I had personal attachments to. It's pretty cool to think of your own creations coming to life and doing battle in the world we live in, and that setup hooked me immediately. Stepping back and looking at the show from an objective lens though, however, I still think that it's one of the more ambitious and creative reverse isekais from the past decade or so. Backed with an amazing soundtrack and pretty nice action, it explores some really interesting themes. Unfortunately, what could have been a hit of the year 2017 kinda lost its way towards the end. Still, a show with the potential to be great ending up being a decently popular show that's good isn't that bad when you think about it. One of the newer titles on the list is at 25, World's Finest Assassin. Something that enthralled anime fans in the year 2021 is this isekai riding on a unique premise. It's still a guy who died and got reincarnated, but this time, instead of the overused neat teenager who's very much in tune with geek culture, it's a grizzled veteran assassin. A no-nonsense hitman whose skills in the real world may just prove to be what's needed for the task the goddess assigns of him, to defeat the previous summoned hero who has turned rogue. But of course, he reincarnates into an overpowered boy who got some female companions to help him out on his mission. However, it's not the typical harem setup that we've all come to experience, and there's certain depths to our protagonist Lug's relationship with said female companions. World's Finest Assassin is also regarded as one of the few isekais where the anime just pushes the source material up to a new level. It's definitely a show that I didn't regret picking up, and speaking from an anecdotal basis, it was the surprise of its season. We turn to the classics for number 24, Familiar of Zero. Familiar of Zero is one of the pillars, I'd say, of the trend of domineering Shana clone shows that put Kugimiya on the map back in the 2000s. In this one, she stars as an incompetent mage who summons the male protagonist in her world. Hilarity ensues, with comedy, ecchi, and a lot of the silliness that you could infer from simply giving the show a glance. Interestingly, the show does carry a bit of political intrigue, and the budding relationship between the two leads made this a rather popular anime for its time. Familiar of Zero is something that you can take a look at for a second and infer its age. It is a product of its time, back when isekai hadn't taken over the anime world, and a lot of anime liked toying around with a tough, violent tsundere dynamic for its leads. At number 23, we have Cautious Hero. The cool thing, which in my opinion helps give isekai its longevity, is just the number of ways you can give it twists. Sure, the end product probably leads to the same overpowered hero defeating the Demon Lord, but for some people, it's the journey, most importantly the start of it, that matters the most. That's much like Cautious Hero, where it's not the hero actually emerging victorious that's the main selling point, but the over-the-top way he works for it to the point of OCD. Along with a butt monkey goddess spearheading the charge, Cautious Hero is a light-hearted isekai that will leave you in stitches. Then you eventually learn that there's more to these characters that they let on early on, and then you would have found yourself very invested in this anime. Cautious Hero runs on a simple concept, a premise that can be summed up in one sentence, yet does a remarkable job at making it entertaining. It's not without its flaws by any means, but it continues to be an amusing watch in spite of those. Grimgar is number 22 on the list. Grimgar was a show that I was excited to watch back when it aired. It was mainly the source material art that drew me in, and when the first episode rolled, it wasn't exactly what I expected. I want to preface that Grimgar is not exactly the type of show that would break out in the mainstream, but that's fine. The anime's selling point is its huge emphasis on the characters and slowly developing them in the world, with emphasis on the latter. It starts pretty slow and can definitely be considered something that's not everyone's cup of tea. Everything does pay off eventually though, and what you get is an isekai that challenges the norms of the genre when it comes to execution and pacing. Whether the end product is worth the wait is for you to decide. Regardless, I think it deserves its flowers for how heavy the focus on slow world building is. The 21st entry is Shield Hero. I remember that Shield Hero was one of the most anticipated adaptations back then, and how could it not be, with its very engaging us against the world premise and the potential with a character who uses a shield instead of the more traditional weapons typical of the genre. And boy, did it stir up things when the anime adaptation hit the screens. It was the talk of the town, and people were quickly drawn into the story of revenge and redemption. Shield Hero is a title that I often put alongside Arifureta, as both are tales of rising from betrayal and overcoming the challenges the world throws at you, just with different approaches when it comes to their protagonists. Shield Hero's engaging narrative and pretty good production values make it something that deserves its hype. So much so that the sequels don't get within an inch of living up to the impact of the first season now that the revenge plot has been dealt with and the show has turned into a more by-the-book isekai. Shield Hero is what I would consider a first season wonder, but its impact towards the end of the previous decade was something to behold.
Are you amazing?
At number 20, we have Sunny Boy. Sunny Boy is quite the unique watch, if I'm honest. People have called this anime something that's similar to Drifting Classroom. They say it's surrealist and people have called it weird. Frankly, I think it's part of the charm, with it providing an experience far different from what isekai viewers typically expect out of the genre. It's similar to what I said about Realist Hero, only this time the focus is driven even further away from action and straight to charismatic characters and their relationships they have with each other. Add in some powers that help define them and allow them to get through the challenges presented by the dimension they find themselves in, and you have yourself a very interesting, albeit quite confusing and complex, take on the isekai genre. It is really an anime that showcases the potential of the isekai genre and the kind of tales that can be woven out of it. It doesn't exactly have to be action-adventure, and it doesn't have to be political charged either. Hailing from the year 2009, we have the number 19th entry on the list, Tenchi Muyo wo Ongemina. Tenchi Muyo is one old franchise dating back to the 90s. It's why I found it surprising that it got a spin-off OVA in the late 2000s and an isekai harem one at that. And looking back at what the franchise had, War on Gemini is one of the better spin-offs. Of course, that doesn't have anything to do with the story, which feels pretty generic yet remains quite enjoyable for the most part. At least it tries with what seems like an underlying plot of conspiracy to keep you anticipating what happens next. But what I really like about War on Gemini, being someone who's moderately exposed to Tenchi Muyo, has to do with how it has the strongest art direction the franchise has ever had. That, and how it's not too often that you get a harem where you find all the girls likable, but this is one of those cases where that holds true, personally speaking. The Tenchi universe is niche, but this can serve as a nice gateway anime into it. For number 18, we have what can be considered a reverse isekai on our hands with Gate. It's the clash of medieval armies against superior modern technology in this 2015 hit. Gate is quite the interesting isekai, as it runs with the premise of the Otherworld invading Japan before flipping to the Japanese military intervening in the Otherworld's affairs. Warfare, battles against fantasy creatures, and political intrigue galore. That's what I tell you to expect out of Gate. Oh, and of course the mandatory ensemble of female companions with their individual quirks and stories. Gate is a fun watch. It's a bit ham-fisted with the military themes, but it's also pretty cool seeing modern weaponry and politics clash with the medieval settings that serve as an isekai staple. The definitive reverse isekai, however, is our number 17th anime, Devil is a Part-Timer. One of the brightest up-and-coming shows in the early 2010s, Devil is a Part-Timer has a simple premise. The hero and the Demon Lord's final battle gets interrupted, and the two got sent into our world where they must learn to live as one of us while juggling both supernatural threats and the merciless toils of normal human life. Nevertheless, it makes for a very engaging anime thanks to the strength of its characters and how it balances serious and comedic moments. It's one of the anime most people can't wait to have a second season. Arguably, the luster had worn off a fair bit after a decade of waiting and the reception to the source material's ending, but the second season still retains a bit of charm that made the first season such a hit. The first season's a surefire winner either way. As we approach the halfway mark, we take a look at Tsukimichi. Things don't always go our way, whether it be fair or not. The moment Makoto finds himself sent to another world, he meets a goddess that quickly sends him off to the middle of nowhere, far from the reaches of humanity. Luckily, his journey and his sheer power draw various denizens of the world to him, and with his new companions, it's up to him to reach fellow humans and reform society. Tsukimichi is a show that has really strong world building for something that primarily markets itself as a comedy. It does carry some strong meme energy along with the power fantasy aspects that it looks to parody. For something that seemed trophy with an added twist or two, I was quite surprised at how well everything came together and worked, plain and simple. Meanwhile, hit that like button if you've been enjoying this list so far, as it would help the channel so much while just taking a few seconds of your time. Back to the list we go. 12 Kingdoms is up next. Here's something from the early 2000s, when isekai wasn't as prevalent. It was a time when high episode counts felt like the norm, and medieval game aesthetics and broken protagonists had yet to define isekai. 12 Kingdoms looks like a product of its time, harkening to classics like Escaflowne with its fantasy kingdoms and the social and political implications of the way they're run. It didn't start off in a snappy, impactful manner that would have drawn people in, but sticking with it for a few episodes proved to be very rewarding. 12 Kingdoms has strong storytelling and world-building aspects to it. If you found yourself tired of the colourful or uber dark aesthetics in isekai, or the tropes that modern takes on the genre just can't be without. If you want something more traditional, more classical fantasy type of deal, then 12 Kingdoms and its 45 episodes ought to give you a lot to enjoy. Welcome to the Demon School. Iruma-kun is at number 14. Demon School Iruma-kun doesn't exactly stand out if you just take a look at the cover. The plot of a boy getting sold to the demon Sullivan who raises him as his grandson is nothing too special either. There's a sort of juvenile aura to the show, but giving it a shot is something that I don't regret in the least. At the end of it all, Demon School Iruma-kun is something that people of all demographics can enjoy. It's got some decent comedy, a colourful world filled with enjoyable characters, and a certain charm that you just feel once you've eased yourself into the show. There's some major wholesome vibes with this anime, and I found it something you can easily pick up and just casually watch. At 13 is Uncle from Another World. This is one of the more recent shows that I vaguely remember got hit with a lot of broadcast delays. It's truly unfortunate at that time because in terms of comedy and self-aware subversions, this is one title that does really well. Uncle from Another World really knows it's a parody. It knows it's a show that finds its strength in comedy and exaggeration, and the results are nothing short of brilliant. It's peak comedy, and it more than suffices with how much it goes on its supposed selling points, all while giving us the figurative camera wink. It was one of the hidden gems of its times, and I do think that more people should give this a shot if they're up for some good old self-aware comedy. Number 12 is Drifters. Drifters is an anime that emphasizes the rule of cool. A dark fantasy story with historical figures coming together for some good high-octane action is what epitomizes the show if you're to ask me. That's not unexpected considering this is an anime that is also from the Hellsing creator, and you all know how that went. It's really a show that thrives on the way it presents its action, full-blown violence that doesn't hold back. All the while, there's some comedy to keep things relatively light-hearted every now and then, and it's up to you whether you enjoy this tonal shift with your dark fantasy story. Personally though, I give this anime that I can equate to an action flick a thumbs up. All this time, Drifters remains one anime that seriously needs a sequel. A true one, not the 2-episode OVA that we got. Feel like having a break from all the fighting? Ascendance of a Bookworm will be a perfect match for you.
私、間違いなく死んだよね。それとも死ぬ間際に変な夢でも見てるとか
Ascendance of a Bookworm takes the isekai genre through yet another twist. Here we have a main character who's neither a badass action hero nor a caricature, a parody of the tropes that we all love to have some laughs from. We have a pretty chill series in comparison, a slice of life that's sure to give anime fans a slightly different flavour of the genre. It's more attuned to being wholesome, and it allows fans to settle in and have some relaxed times in the world our protagonist finds herself in. It's one of the best isekai out there with respect to just how underrated it seems to be. You don't really hear a lot of people talk about this besides the more hardcore or devoted fans, and it's actually quite a shame. This may not be something that leads itself to being a mainstream hit, but you should all give it a try. And in a complete shift of tone, our journey to the top 10 starts with Saga of Tanya the Evil. Relaxing and chill are definitely not words we can use to describe this military isekai. Your salaryman protagonist dies and gets reincarnated. Because the god of this world doesn't like him, he gets thrown into an alternative world, reincarnated as a girl, and facing the dread of war. You can pretty much guess how the rest goes, as well as the themes get emphasized in this popular anime. It is in fact a dream for any fan looking to have a taste of the edgier and darker side of the genre. It's an anime that can be quite the polarizing experience actually. Fans either love it or hate it, and there's not a lot in between from what I can see. Whether for good or bad, there's a lot of buzz surrounding this show that could be felt years even after its initial 2017 airing. It's not close to a generic isekai by any means, and if you're the type who enjoys a story with grey morality, some strategic fights, and the theme of rising up against a god, then this is right in your element. For our number 9 spot, we have The Boy and the Beast. The Boy and the Beast is a movie that I didn't hear many people talk about back in 2015, but being a fan of Mamoru Hosoda and his movies, I gave it a shot and found myself experiencing a rather solid movie. It's rife with great visuals, a simple yet engrossing plot, and heartwarming scenes, and it should evoke comparisons to the more mainstream family movies Japan has given us. The crux of the plot isn't anything new, being a coming-of-age story with a young protagonist who's torn between two worlds, but it nevertheless just hits us hard. Got to admit that it lacks the it thing, whether emotionally or visually, to make it truly stand out and garner much acclaim, but as far as a movie about travelling between worlds and how beings from different worlds should get along fine, it does get the job done. The Boy and the Beast serves to be a good palate cleanser if you find yourself wanting to watch a movie about multiple worlds, but also find yourself weary of the fan service, the edginess, or the standard overpowered heroes in isekai anime. In the 8th spot we have Overlord. There are a number of these ruthless, immoral protagonist isekai going around the past decade now that I think about it. Overlord, however, takes place inside a video game where we get to follow the exploits of the skeletal lich Ainz and his crew of loyal servants. It got quite the buzz before due to its darker take on the trapped in a game storyline and the type of protagonists it features. However, I do think that Overlord's strength is that there's a whole lot more to Ainz, something that we learn as the story goes on. It's a character-driven story, and I think that's where its core appeal lies, besides the charismatic characters of course, and the world that has been wonderfully brought to life by Madhouse. It may be easy to pass off as one of those overpowered protagonists isekais due to how stupidly broken Ainz gets and how he's willing to flex all that power, but I dare say there's a lot more to Overlord than the cool factor that first meets the eye. Reincarnated as a slime is at number 7. This is the king of the weak to strong stories in modern isekai if you ask me. Even if it plays the genre beat straight and feels more stereotypical at first glance, Reincarnated as a slime proves that you don't exactly need fancy gimmicks to try to set yourself apart in order to be one of the more entertaining shows out there. All you need is a good protagonist for the fans to latch onto, some epic fights, and a colourful cast of characters to give life to the colourful world that the story's set in. Throw in some aspects of kingdom building in this adventure and you've got yourself a pretty fun and engaging tale that's good for multiple seasons and a whole lot of popularity. Slime doesn't try to reach for the fancy or the shocking, but it may just be what we need in this world where everything's trying so hard to be unique or a parody. 6th is Sword Art Online. If there's one thing SAO is, it's being at the right place at the right time. Around the time of its first season, we were at the cusp of some technological breakthroughs with gaming and the internet. Then here comes this anime with a gripping premise and a cool protagonist at a time when the big mainstream hits are slowly winding down and you get one of the biggest anime phenomena of the 2010s. Much has been said about SAO in its decade of popularity, but I think one thing that often gets understated is how the series does a great job of maintaining consistency in its themes. The death game's never the point, and it's always been about how the real and the virtual intersect, something you see in its various arcs. Still, SAO has its fair share of issues, mostly related to the protagonist and the fan service, that make it such a polarizing topic and prevent it from reaching the heights something like, say, Attack on Titan has reached. But one can't deny the influence it had on pushing us into the era of isekai's peak popularity. We open the top 5 with Eminence in Shadow. If there's a recent show that ended up being way better and more popular than I ever expected it to be, Eminence in Shadow is that show. Everything had the hallmark of it for being a cult hit, but for everything to blow up like this, I didn't see that coming. I do think it's mainly due to how well Eminence in Shadow embraced the memes and its strengths in irony and parody. It's something that's meant to be cringe, but when you take a closer look at it, there's quite a lot to unpack. It's got a whole lot of genuinely awesome moments for one, and while it took a while to get going, it soon turns into something that you just can't turn off. Maybe due to the absurdity of things or how you've unwittingly found yourself attached to the characters. It's a parody that's more than what it sells you on, and that's how it became one of the bigger hits in the past few years. Granted, it's not something for everyone, but for those right in the target market, it's nothing short of awesome.
I need more power.
Following that up is Konosuba. Now, for a slightly different flavour of parody. Like Eminence in Shadow, Konosuba is a parody isekai, but it eschews the semblance of a plot for an all-in focus on simply pure entertainment. Its characters are even more over-exaggerated molds of archetypes, and a lot of its comedy simply goes over the top. Konosuba is the anime that is here to just show us how creative anime can be with references and playing around with cliches, giving us multiple seasons and a movie of nothing but laughs. And the main quartet are just the perfect type of character to make this work like a charm. I don't typically describe certain titles as shows where you just turn your brain off and sit back, relishing in the madness. But I think that fits Konosuba to a T. Its comedy may be niche at times or downright degenerate, but it's all in the spirit of fun that only a special breed of anime can give. For our top 3, we start things off with No Game, No Life.
ここって
Remember Problem Child from a while back? That's what many consider a prototype of one of 2014's most popular anime, No Game, No Life. No Game, No Life revisits a world where everything is ruled by games, a whole plethora of unique ones, but it does put more focus on comedic references and off-the-rails fan service. It's truly popcorn entertainment that someone very attuned to anime culture will resonate with. The characters also do their fair share of carrying interest through the show, with the protagonist twins getting a whole lot of awesome big brain moments to their credit. On another note, the prequel movie No Game, No Life Zero is a huge tonal shift, being a lot more serious, but is undoubtedly one of the best anime films I've seen in the 2010s. It does deserve a shout out no matter which way I look at it. I still want a second season of the main series though. Coming in at number 2 is Mushoku Tensei. While SAO undoubtedly helped kickstart the modern isekai craze, Mushoku Tensei is one that laid the groundwork for what we've come to expect out of isekai, genre conventions, character tropes and the like. At its core, it's a story of growth and redemption entwined with an adventure, a comprehensive story of how Rudeus changes and grows as he comes across more characters and gets to interact with the world more. It's also got more outstanding production values, which we don't really see every day. Mushoku Tensei has the distinction of being one of the best adapted isekai out there, fitting for being such an influential series in the bigger scope of things. The excellent adaptation and production has got to count for something, considering how anime adaptations can often be so hit or miss, especially when dealing with mediums like novels. Last but not least, we have ReZero.
ああ、今のはとても感じたわ。
ReZero dumps on the idea of the overpowered hero trope and is without the more controversial aspects of anime, which shows like Mushoku tend to have a lot of. Instead, you get pushed into following the story of a plucky protagonist and see how he works through various pitfalls and deaths in order to reach his happy ending. Along the way, we get to see different facets of characters and the world all coming together to form a very engaging thriller, one where we quickly get hooked to finding out what happens next. And what I love about ReZero is that at its core, it's still a modern anime. It doesn't make a big fuss about doing away with the tropes and still gives us the magical powers, the waifus, the convoluted character drama, and the other elements that make anime what it is as compared to other mediums of entertainment. Overall, I think ReZero is the complete package and deserving of being arguably the best isekai had to offer in this century. But do you agree with my opinion that ReZero is the best? Do tell me down in the comments section. You can also share your top isekai titles as we reminisce about one of the most enduring genres anime has seen. Now, it's been a long ride and I thank you for watching all the way to the end. I wish you a great day and I'll see you next time.